Hey everybody, welcome back to the wild world of Stephanie Bree's crazy chaotic brain, also known as my YouTube channel. Uh Today I'm talking about jobs, specifically the 108 jobs I've had in my life. Yeah, that's a big number and it's a real number. I am not going to read the list and tell you every single fucking job I've ever had. I am not going to go in sequential order. I did this and then this and then this and then this. This would be an 8-hour video if I did that. God damn. I'm going to hit the highlights and talk about some of my favorite jobs, some of my least favorite jobs, jobs that were just okay, some of the jobs that I would do again if I had to, some of my dream jobs that I've tried to get and either haven't done, or some of my dream jobs I have done, because I actually have at one point in time, more than once, had my literal dream job more than once. So that's pretty fucking cool. However, I'm bipolar, I have PTSD, borderline personality disorder, I'm neurodivergent, my brain is a chaotic mess of spider webs, covering a Ferris wheel, sitting on top of a roller coaster, at the tip of a rocket ship, flying through a black hole. So my thoughts are fucking random. Aight? Alright, so let's talk about jobs. Um First, contrary to what dipshit conservative neocons think, I am actually employed full time. And I make pretty decent living. I'm not going to tell you how much I make or what my living circumstances are, but for the most part, I make enough money to survive. The asterisk being I have a lot of student loan debt, I have a lot of credit card debt and medical debt, and some other issues that keep me from getting too far ahead in life. But for the most part, I make enough money to at least pay my bills, even if it ain't enough to pay off my debts. Unfortunately, it is what it is. And contrary to what neocons probably think about trans people or queer people or whatever, because they think lowly of um, minorities, anyways, I got my first job when I was 12 years old. And actually, it was an entrepreneurial endeavor. My first work for hire was a small business I started. It started out as just a Kool-Aid stand on the side of the road where I would sell Kool-Aid to thirsty construction workers. And then eventually it morphed into doing yard work for people, raking leaves, mowing lawns, pulling weeds, etc. And then shoveling snow in the wintertime. I did this for a little while until I reached the tender age of 13, where I was finally legally old enough to go to work for the newspaper, where I got my first taste of the journalism industry as a carrier delivering newspapers to people's front porches. This job, unfortunately, was short lived for two reasons, as a lot of my jobs were. Reason number one, the chaos in my brain. Um, I was undiagnosed bipolar, undiagnosed neurodivergent most of my life. So this had two impacts on my ability to do the newspaper job. First of all, my fucking memory sucks, especially short term memory. So I was not always giving newspapers to the customers who paid for it. And sometimes I was giving newspapers to customers who didn't pay for it. And also, I'm clumsy. I do not have very defined fine motor skills or hand-eye coordination, which does come up later in this video, as well as has come up in the past in some of my other videos, talking about math and my prescription for video games, etc. I've already talked about those. You can go back and rewatch my videos if you want. No, I'm too lazy to put links in the description, so you'll just have to watch them all. Thank you very much. That being said, uh, let's just say I broke a couple of windows. I may have broken one or two porch lights. It's possible. I plead the fifth, but it's possible a windshield was broken, but I'm not saying it was by my newspaper because I don't think the newspaper could break a windshield. I'm just saying the newspaper did go through the windshield, and the newspaper publisher decided that was the end of my employment. That following summer, the summer of my age 13, just before I turned 14, I got another job. This job was working for a company I will not identify. I'm not going to really identify too many of the companies I've worked for. But it was an irrigation company, I don't know if I should say irrigation company. It was a farm company, and what they did was hired 7th and 8th graders to go into the cornfield and detassel the corn. I don't remember the scientific or practical farming reason why they did this, but they plant corn in rows where you have male, 4 rows of female, male, 4 more rows of female. But plants aren't naturally male or female, so you got to go in and neuter the plant to make it a female, which means ripping the, genitals off, the tassel, which is the sex organ of the plant. I mean, we're just using scientific terms here. So that was my second job where I actually had a paycheck, but that was my first job where I got a W-2. Because the newspaper doesn't pay, you don't work for the newspaper. The way it works is they sell you the newspapers and then you deliver them and then go around at the end of the month and collect the money from the subscribers, turn that in, and the newspaper subtracts what the newspaper cost and gives you your cut. If you're doing like I did, you're not making any money because you're breaking windows and porch lights, etc. That comes out of your take. So, you know what? I didn't do it for very long. I would not get another job of any sort until I was 17. At this point, I had already dropped out of high school the first time and was forced to go back due to complicated reasons I don't want to get into here. I've already talked about. And so I got a part-time job working at a casino in a restaurant as what they call a busser. A busser is a person who goes around and cleans the tables for the wait staff who takes your order and delivers your drinks. Sometimes the busser brings you your drink. Sometimes they seat you at your table, although they're not supposed to because that's the host person's job. But sometimes restaurants cut costs and ask the busser to do it. And then they cut the busser job and then they ask the wait person to bus their own tables, which is obnoxious and you shouldn't do. If you're a restaurant owner, please don't do that. That's not how you save money. That's a shitty thing to do because then your wait staff are overworked and underpaid. And they're already overworked and underpaid to begin with. That job I quit, I walked out on mid-shift because I was still in high school and I told my boss that I couldn't work the overnight shift. And he scheduled me on a Monday midnight shift. And I'm like, I can't. I have to be up at 6 a.m. to go to school because I was in band and band was at 0 hour, which started at 6 a.m. I couldn't miss band because I was, the drummer. I was the drummer. We were a very small school. We only had 10 kids in the band. No drummer. That you can't have a band without a drummer. So I was, I said, fuck you, I'm going home. My next few jobs, 5 or 6 thereabouts, were what I would classify as low-skill manual labor. I dropped out of high school again, no GED, no high school diploma, so I had to go to work at another restaurant inside the same casino, which necessitated me begging for them to forgive me for walking out on the previous job and also assuring them that wouldn't happen again. That was a lie. It did, but we'll get there. And then later on, leaving that job without even showing up for, I didn't even walk out on the shift. I just didn't show up for work, and then went on a road trip with my sister. That's a whole nother video for another day. And then came back to town again, moved back in with my parents, and I had to beg the casino for a third opportunity. This time they sent me to go work with my dad under his supervision, which you don't do, but they did anyways, because they figured, if my dad was my boss, I wouldn't quit the job, because then I had to go home to my dad, and that's awkward. So I went to work at the shop where he worked, which was it was technically a gas station, but because this was a small town in Nevada, it was the only gas station in town, and it was like 30 plus miles either direction to get to the next gas station. And because it was a small town, it was also an auto shop. So the dynamic was, I worked at the register and ran the shop. I mean, the C-store, stocking shelves, cooking hot dogs, cleaning toilets, that bullshit, and running the register. And my dad was the light duty mechanic who worked in the shop, working on cars. My employment at this establishment ended involuntarily when my boss called me up one day and told me I was no longer needed. I'm not going to tell you what happened. It's none of your business. We're just going to say I was a teenager and leave it at that. All right. It's complicated, but I was a dumb teenager, I'll admit it. My next job, I tried to parlay my cashier experience to get a job first at Hollywood Video, who shot me down because I didn't have enough experience. And then I tried Sears, who shot me down because I didn't have enough experience. And then I tried a local department store. This pattern repeated for a while until Kmart took a chance on me. So I went to work at Kmart as what they called the K100. K100 is shorthand for the bitch. You did whatever the fuck they needed. You did the dirty work. Because I was 18 at this time and I still didn't have my GED yet, I was the only cashier who was legally eligible to operate the box crusher. So I got the desirable shifts just by default because they needed somebody in store who could operate the box crusher because they crush a lot of fucking boxes. Also, I was cart runner, I was cashier, I worked in the garden center, I worked in the electronics department, I worked in sporting goods, etc., etc., etc. Mostly stocking shelves, so I would unload the truck, My shift was divided up into unload the truck, and then the people whose job it was to put shit on the shelf would go put it on the shelves, and then I would head over to the garden center and give them a lunch break, and then I would go to electronics, give them a lunch break, go run carts in between tasks, and then go give the cashier a lunch break. You know what I mean? That was my job, just giving everybody lunch breaks. Well, this was cool because I actually got some hands-on cashier experience to go on top of my existing cash handler experience. Not enough to get the coveted, for a teenager, job at McDonald's, which I was applying for, because I didn't have the high school diploma, which was at this point in time a requirement in order to work at McDonald's, which I think is stupid because, for fuck's sake, you don't need an education to work at McDonald's, but let's be real. Whatever. Anyways, so McDonald's wouldn't hire me. So I tried pizza delivery. I went over across town to Pizza Hut, and they were looking for a delivery driver. They didn't ask me any questions in the interview other than, when can you start? And I said, today. And he handed me a shirt and said, be back at 5 and I'll put you to work. And I was like, holy shit. All right, cool. So I didn't call my boss at Kmart. I didn't go back. I just decided, cool, I got a better job. So I went to work at Pizza Hut. I did this for a while until my dad got sick and he was in the hospital in ICU for 11 days straight. And I was tired from working a double shift. I wanted to go see my dad in the hospital, and my boss said, I need you to come back in the morning to do the morning shift. It was a Sunday morning shift. That's a busy shift for Pizza Hut. And I said, no, I just worked Saturday morning. I'm getting off Saturday night. I'm not coming back Sunday morning. And he said, you don't have a choice. I don't have anyone else to do it. And I was like, well, then I guess you're doing it, because I went home. This is where I'm going to fast forward a little bit. I took some jobs through the temporary agency, a lot of jobs through the temporary agency, doing a lot of bullshit. I did some construction. I did some yard work type stuff, ground maintenance. I worked for an apartment building as a groundskeeper. I did hotel desk for front desk for a motel, not hotel desk. It's the same job, but for a motel. And, and then I did get the job at Sears. And then Sears said, oh, wait a minute, you don't have a GED. We should have asked you that before we hired you, and they fired me. Whatever. So finally, 2003, I dropped out of high school in 2001. So after 2 years of doing shit fucking god-awful jobs, I decided it was time to get my GED. So March 2003, I went over to the local community college. I took the test. I gave them the money. They gave me a piece of paper that said I'm smart, and I was like, cool. This did not immediately improve my station in life. I am coming from a poor family. White trash. We lived in a trailer park. Disadvantaged. Both parents high school dropouts. I was a high school dropout with just a GED. So I'm not really employable. And I have a resume made out of Swiss cheese. So I went through a few dozen more pizza driver jobs. I worked for Pizza Hut here. I worked for Domino's there. I worked for another Pizza Hut, another Domino's, a Little Caesars, a Papa John's, and back and forth and back and forth. For about, I'd say about 5 or 6 years, I just rotated around, moved to the next town, worked over there until that job ran its course, etc., etc. Until I got tired of it and decided I was done. I didn't want to do pizza driver anymore. So I wanted to do something else. Up to this point, like I said, my resume was Swiss cheese with a big old chunk of pizza delivery, which, you can convince the guy who owns the local independent Chevron station that you have cash handling experience, and he'll let you work at his register for a couple of months until you fuck up, and then he kicks you out the door. But this is not enough cash handling experience to get a job at a department store like Target or Shopko or Sears I already been fired from Sears. There was no Walmart in town, so it was like, oh, okay. And none of the gas stations, and none of the jobs I wanted. I kept applying for Hollywood Video. I would apply every 6 months. I'd go to a Hollywood Video and reapply. Blockbuster Video, reapply. I wanted to work at a video store. I really did. This is what I wanted to do. All things considered, if video stores were still in business and I never went to college and I had got the job at Blockbuster, I'd still be there to this day because that's the job I wanted. But this didn't work out. Now, on the side of all this, I had some hustles. I had a lot of side hustles because I'm a poor person. So one of my side hustles was a website where I had an online retail store that eventually I shut down and turned it into an eBay store because it was cheaper and easier, selling collectibles from my childhood. Video games, comic books, action figures, trading cards, lunch boxes, vinyl records, cassette tapes, VHS tapes, etc., etc., etc. I was able to make just enough money off of this that on those occasions where I found myself in between jobs, my parents didn't like pressure me too hard to get another job because I was still making money. I was paying my bills, paying the rent, buying my own groceries, buying my own shit. So they left me alone because I was still paying my way. My other side hustle was DJ. I started this in high school. I'm going to do a whole video on this one of these days where I get into the nitty gritty, but all you need to know is I did some school dances. I had turntables. I had record players. I had mixers. I had all the shit. So I did some weddings. I did some quinceañeras. I did some high school dances, some high school parties, some college frat parties, shit like that. Not enough to make it a business, to print business cards and do it full time. It was more like once every 3 or 4 months I'd get a gig, just enough to give me some extra cash to infuse some money into my failing YouTube, this was way before YouTube, eBay business, where I'd make the rounds at the thrift stores and flea markets and stuff and scour for collectibles to put on eBay. After a while, other people started getting into the eBay scene. Now, I was not the first, but I was doing it before some of the big names who are out there were doing it. So I was not the first, but I was early enough in the game that I had a good business until more business acumen people than me, with more money than me, and more marketing power than me, got in and pretty much forced me out of it because I couldn't compete. So eventually I did shut down my eBay store, and I just liquidated my comic books and everything. Sold them to one collector. I said, here's everything I have. Took pictures, sent him emails back and forth, shipped it all to him. He sent me the money, and I moved on. In 2007, I took my first detour from the path of I didn't know what the fuck I wanted to do with my life. Which before I jump into that, I'm going to tell you about my final side hustle. My final side hustle was videos. So I had a camcorder, I had a VCR, a video capture card, I had a video sign machine that I could project films or film strips into and then hook up a camera to it and get it onto the computer and burn it to a DVD. So I was making money capturing people's home videos, taking their VHS home videos, taking their old 8mm films, taking their old film slideshows, etc., and putting those on photo CDs or DVDs or what have you. I did this for a little bit. Not enough to make a significant income, but like I said, enough between my other hustles to keep my parents off my back when I was between jobs, sampling the jobs, trying to find my way in life. By the way, this is going to be a pretty long video. It's going to be one of my longer videos, because at this point in time, I'm only up to 23 years of age. Everything up to what I've told you so far. I'm 41 now. So, grab some popcorn. In 2009, I took my second detour into the maybe this is what I want to do with my life. But before I tell you that, I got to backtrack and tell you that first detour. So, in 2007, I was working at a hotel desk for a casino, and I decided I didn't want to do this, so I did my usual, walked out on shift, went home, and said, fuck it, I'll get another job tomorrow, which I did. Well, I kept doing. I did that a lot. I would later learn this was because I'm bipolar and borderline personality and PTSD, and I have a hard time with concentration and putting up with people and other stuff. But I didn't know this at the time. So I was trying to figure out what fit, what felt right, what I could comfortably do with the skill set I did possess and with my abilities, my capabilities. So my first detour, I talked a little bit about in my Power Tools video. If you've already seen it, yay, thank you. If you haven't, go watch it next. I Okay, so I'm not going to get into the particulars, but I'm just going to say this. I had two brothers-in-law because I had three sisters and they all got married. And two of my... All right, I'll just tell you. Two of my sisters married two brothers. Okay? So, sister A married brother A. Sister B married brother B. So, it's messy, but it wasn't technically incest, but it's messy. Well, brother A, the oldest brother, had a kid and a house and a family and a car, and he needed to pay bills. So he got a job as a plumber. And brother B had a kid, a house, a car, and needed to pay bills. So he got a job as an HVAC technician. No, apprentice level, in both cases. This was, like I said, 2007, so this was right before the housing bubble burst. This was right smack dab in the middle of the bubble when everybody was going into construction because people were building houses left and right and center. So my plan was to be the electrician, and the three of us were going to get our journeyman's licenses and go start a construction company together. And that's what the plan was. I was the first to give up on the plan, and then brother B gave up on the plan, and then brother A, well, he kept doing it. So he's a plumber. He's a master plumber to this day. He's making pretty goddamn good money. You know, if I had stuck with it, I'd be making pretty goddamn good money too. But all things considered, I'm not disappointed in the path I took, as I'm going to get to here pretty soon. In 2009, I took the second detour into what I thought I wanted to do with my life. Because, remember, I hadn't gone to college yet. All I had so far was a GED and a Swiss cheese resume. With a whole blob of big chunk of pizza delivery smack in the middle of it. And a whole bunch of other random shit that couldn't come together to form any marketable skill. So I decided to go to trucking school. Because several of my uncles were truckers. My fiance at the time, two of her uncles were truckers. There were a lot of truck drivers in my family. My grandpa was a truck driver. So I had a lot of pressure to go into trucking anyways, and I figured, fuck it, this sounds like an easy job, you know, get to fucking eat Cheetos all day, driving down the road listening to iTunes because I had an iPod at the time. I figured, fuck it, this sounds like something I can do. Well, I'm not going to get into the particulars here because I may have already talked about it. I don't remember. But I will talk about it again when I talk about my time in trucking school. But let's just say I flunked out of trucking school and I got sent home. My parents wanted to send me to the military. Now you got to remember, I was male presenting at the time. I was registered for the Selective Service. And the war in Afghanistan and Iraq and the war on terror were in full force. So there was a lot of pressure to join the military. So I did go in and talk to the recruiter. And I know they don't do this often because their job is to just lie to you and get you on the battlefield. The Army recruiter told me, no. You want the Navy. The Navy recruiter told me, no. You want the Air Force. The Air Force recruiter said, no. You want the Army. And after 3 weeks of going in circles saying, well, they sent me to you, they sent me to you, they sent me to you, I got the general gist that none of them wanted me. So I just said, fuck it, and gave up. Now, I'm pretty sure this may have had something to do with some of my answers in the interrogation where they try to, the pre-screening interrogation. I don't know, whatever. Needless to say, when they asked me stupid bullshit questions like, Can you do X number of push-ups? Oh, I'll never do a push-up. Well, you have to if you go to basic training. Oh, I'll never do a push-up. Why? Because I never did them in PE. Why would I do them for you? Oh, okay. Well, all right. Go talk to the Army guy. Go talk. You know what I mean? And there were other things like if someone was shooting at you, would you shoot back? And I was like, no, I'd probably crawl into the ditch and cover my face. Well, what if they're shooting at you? Can't you shoot back? And I'm like, no, I don't want to shoot anybody. Oh, okay. So, they didn't like my answers. Now, the Army guy got clever, and he said, what if you're pinned against a wall, they got a gun to your head, and they're going to kill you? Is it okay to shoot him? And I said, no, he's probably going to get the bullet off before I can even reach my gun. So I guess at that point I'm dead. And since I don't want to die, and I can't imagine a scenario where I go to Iraq and don't die, are you sure you want me to go to Iraq? And yeah. So I walked away from the military and decided, nah, that's not going to work. My parents were pissed because this was my last opportunity. They literally told me this is your last straw. They kicked me out of the house. They finally booted me. I was homeless for the first time in my life. Not the last. Well, actually second time in my life, but that's a whole other story. But it wouldn't be the last time I'd be homeless. Well, we'll get there. So I ended up cutting a deal with my sister. She had an old broken down van that didn't run in her backyard. And she agreed to let me live in her van, take the seats out, take the steering wheel off, just strip it down, and live in it like an RV. On the condition that, one, I babysat her kids whenever she needed me to, and two, I got a job as soon as I could. Now, I did have my own car at the time, so it was like, okay, yeah, sure, I'll go fucking get a job, whatever. So I got a job at a nursing home, I was a cook, and I'm taking the tray of food out to the old folks, and I'm just going to say I have a weak stomach. Somebody blew snot bubbles out of their nose. I puked and got sent home and never went back. So I'm sitting in my sister's backyard, basically homeless, more or less, because I'm not allowed in the house unless... I'm not allowed in the house, but it's like, this is your space, this is our space. I was invited in for supper, but the rest of the time I was supposed to be looking for work. And since I wasn't, I was pretty much, hey, you can come in when you have a job, that kind of deal. So I sat down with my sister one day and I said, listen, look at my experience. I don't have any worthwhile experience. I don't really have a worthwhile education. I don't have I'm talking to my sister. I said, unlike you, I don't have a husband to take care of me. I failed at this. I failed at this. I failed at this. Blah, 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 blah. I've got to do something. And she asked me, what do you want to do? And I thought about it. And I said, well, I want to be a writer, but that's not realistic. I want to be a television producer, but that's not realistic. I want to be a filmmaker, but that's not realistic. And she said, no, that is realistic. And I was like, what? And she brought up the website to the local university and said, right here, they have a degree that will teach you how to do what you want to do. And it was a bachelor's of science in broadcasting. And I was like, huh. And so I thought, yeah, that looks cool. So my sister helped me apply for student loans, which I got approved. And she helped me fill out the application. And I hit roadblock number 1. Roadblock number 1 was because I knew I was going to drop out as soon as I was legally old enough, because in Idaho, I was legally old enough at 17, but Nevada, at 16, Nevada, you had to be 18, I think it was. So it was like, what's the fucking point if I got to wait all the way till I'm 18? And so I made a deal with my guidance counselor, because at that time I thought I was going to be a rap star. I know. Because I had the DJ equipment. I thought I was a rapper. Okay, so Yeah, that was another side hustle I haven't talked about yet. But I did the whole start a record studio, get CDs in the record store, get songs on the radio, and then I went out of business, and then I went back to looking for jobs. But that's another video for another day because that's a whole long story. Okay, that's a side quest. We're just talking about jobs, paychecks that I've had. So they said, well, you... Oh, okay, back it up. I told my guidance counselor, I'm going to drop out and get my GED anyways. And she said, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to be a rap star. And she said, okay, what classes do you want to take? And I said, well, I want to take writing classes. I want to take music classes, music appreciation, music publications, band, choir, the works. So she agreed. She agreed to give me a full schedule of all electives. No required classes. No math, no English, no social studies, no gym, nothing. It was literally just art, poetry, creative writing, music appreciation, band, choir, etc., 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 for 2 years. On the condition she would agree to this and keep the, what are they called? School board and administrators off my back, on the condition that I took the SAT prep class so I would at least have the benchmark on education to be able to pass the GED when the time came, which I did do. So I kept my promise. I did. I went and got my GED. And I went to be a rap star, and I sucked at it, and I went out of business, and you'll never find those records because they're all in the trash. Oh yeah, I sucked. I was a white Christian rapper pretending to be Eminem. There's no market for that, and I sucked. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass. So they said, you didn't take any required classes in high school. Why should we let you into college? And so I gave them my life story. I told them everything I have done up to that point, including the record studio and the side hustles and all this other stuff, starting a business, losing it, starting a business, losing it, things like that. And they were impressed. And they said, oh, okay. And I said, look, here's the thing. I need an education, or I'm going to end up homeless on the streets doing meth. And they agreed. So the dean of the college agreed to give me credit for the classes that I did take the first 2 years I was in high school, and said, all I need you to do is take one foreign language to meet the foreign language requirement. I need you to take high school math and then pre-algebra and then algebra to meet the math requirement. And then I need you to take high school English 1, high school English 2, and then English 101, English 102 to meet the English requirement. If you'll take those classes, or you'll agree to take those classes, I will admit you into the program you want and let you pick out the classes you need to fulfill your requirements, major, minor, and general electives, general studies. So at first I was like, okay, well, that sounds like a good plan, but do I have to do the math class? And he said yes. So I was like, okay, fine, this sucks. So I did. I started my college education. I'm going to skip over this part because this is a whole meaty video. Because I went to school for 4 years and I did not end up getting my degree. There is a big ass meaty story behind that that's coming in the future video. So, needless to say, I ended up getting kicked out of school and was homeless again for the third time in my life until my aunt took me in. It was at this point my aunt made me a deal. I will let you sleep in my spare bedroom on the condition that I'll give you 3 months to get a job. I know you've had a hard time. You just got kicked out of school. You're a little rattled right now. I will give you 3 months to find a job, but you would better have a job and keep it after that 3 months or I'm booting you. And you have to get enrolled in another college program today before the semester starts or I'm booting you. So I did. I got enrolled in another college program, this time a community college, for 1 semester just to renew my to keep my financial aid current, because you lose it if you don't use it. It's weird. Anyways, so I got a job. I got a temporary job working at a, what the fuck is it called? Hockey arena. Basically just picking up trash at the hockey arena. But it was only 1 day a week and it didn't pay that much. So she said that doesn't count. You got to get a second job or a full-time job. So I got a job working at Advance Auto Parts. This is where luck and the grace of God comes in. I got a job working at Advance Auto Parts, and my job was based on my previous experience working with my dad in the shop and bullshitting my way through their questionnaire about what I know about cars, because I do just enough to convince them that, okay, you can sell auto parts, and just enough cash handling experience through the gas stations and Kmart's and Pizza Huts and pizza delivery experience. She gave me a job as a mobile parts pro, which is a fancy word for delivery driver / parts salesperson. So I would deliver parts to local businesses in the area, car dealerships, car shops, etc. And in my downtime between deliveries, run the register, sell parts, unload the truck, clean the shelves, restock the shelves, face the shelves, etc., etc., etc. Put wiper blades on people's cars, whatever, what have you. Now, I got lucky. I was there for just about 2 weeks when she hired this young kid. Now, at this time, I am 29 years old. So, yeah, up to 29, everything I've just told you was only up to 29. So, that's a lot of fucking jobs. And I didn't even tell you every single one of them. But, anyways, I was 29 years old and he was 18. And I'm on a delivery, giving him the spiel, training him, telling him, when we go to this place, you got to talk to this guy and say these things and sign this, you know what I mean? Just showing him the ropes. And we got to talking, and I told him about my time in college, and he said, oh, why'd you quit? And I said, well, I'm between colleges right now. I'm trying to get back in, but I'm between college. And he's like, oh, okay, that's cool. And he said, what are you studying? And I said, well, broadcasting, video production, things like that. And he said, oh, my wife is a wedding photographer. And I was like, that's cool. And she said, and my uncle owns a wedding photography business. And I was like, tell me more. And it turns out he owned a complete wedding business. So they did photo booth, they did videography, they did photography, and they did DJ. So he got me an interview. He said, do you want an interview? And I was like, yes, please. So he got me an interview with his uncle. And I went in, and because I had just enough experience as a DJ, and I had just enough experience doing videography bullshit, dabbling on YouTube and other stuff, my degree was in broadcasting, so I had some education in the field. He's like, you know what? Yeah, sure. So that's not where luck stepped in just yet. Not quite. That was the first lucky break, but it gets better. So it actually gets better. And here's where it gets better. My first night out as a videographer, I'm talking to the guy training me, and we're doing the job, taking pictures of the kids and the grandparents and the cake and everything else, blah, 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 blah. And then we're driving home back to the studio where we're going to drop off the equipment and get our respective cars and go home. And he tells me he works at the local TV station as a production assistant. And I was like, that's a pretty cool job. He said, yeah, we're hiring for a video editor. Would you like to do that? And I was like, yes, please. So he got me an interview with the news director of the TV station. And, I tried bullshitting my way through the interview, and halfway through it, the news director put his hand up and said, listen, a monkey can push a button. It's a space bar. It's literally hit the space bar, watch the video, hit the space bar again, hit the button on the keyboard, you're done. It's an easy job. I don't hire people for their skill. I hire people for their personality, and you've got the personality. So he gave me the job. First video editor, and then camera operator, and then production assistant, and then assistant producer. So I worked at that TV station. I climbed the ladder as good as I could with the skill set I had until that job came to an end, and I ended up moving to Texas. This was Nebraska by the way. I ended up moving to Texas. Again, my sister, who I'd lived in her backyard before, well, she divorced, remarried, moved to Texas, and now she had a farm and an RV, an actual proper RV, and acreage and all this other land and stuff. So she said, come live with us. You can live in our RV. You can get a job at a local TV station here or a newspaper or whatever, and we'll get you back on your feet. So okay, so I moved to Texas, and I got a job at a TV station as a master control operator. Long story short, I pushed the wrong button at the wrong time, and I took the Wheel of Fortune off the air, which you do not do unless you want 10,000 angry phone calls simultaneously. Also, if you still want to have a job the next day. Well, so I found myself back at delivery. I was working for Jimmy John's, delivering sub sandwiches this time because Domino's didn't pay shit in Texas, and there was no Pizza Hut because, I don't know, they were disappearing at that time. Anyways, and then I got lucky. I picked up a newspaper. I lived in a small town in Texas, so I went and bought the local small town newspaper because I figured they would have the jobs. I was looking for anything. I was like, fuck it. Gas station, maybe, the grocery store, whatever. I'm starting over. I just need a job while I realign myself, is what my plan was. Just something that wasn't delivery driver. And in that newspaper's wanted section was an ad for a staff writer right there in town. So I put on my best suit and tie, went in with my resume. I had cleaned it up and doctored it and made it look better than it was. And needless to say, I got the job. And I worked at a couple months. This led me down the path of news industry. So I worked at a lot of newspaper businesses. I worked at a couple of different 3 or 4 different newspapers altogether. 2 of them staff, 2 of them freelance. And then I went to work at another TV station where I was a television producer. However, this was the start of COVID. I just started transitioning into a woman. I'd come out as trans, started taking hormone replacement therapy. Long story short, my job ended. I was homeless again. This time nowhere to go. So I moved in with a trans woman who I had met online, who lived in Dallas. I was an hour north of Dallas, so she moved me into her house and helped me get on my feet. And this is where I took the detour that led me to where I am. I started rethinking myself. I decided at that time I didn't want to go back into journalism because it was too stressful. So at the time, because this was right in the thick of COVID, I got a job at a COVID-19 testing site. My job was twofold. The first part of my job was to open the packages and catalog the samples, separate them out wherever they went, go take the sample to the lab, give it to the respective scientists to do their job, and then go back to my desk with the paperwork and plug the information into the computer so that we could, bill the insurance company and get paid. So I did this for a while until that job ended because, they stopped doing COVID-19 testing as heavily as they were. This was after the at-home kits came out, so it was like, oh, I guess we're not needed anymore. So I did a few office temp jobs here and there because, as a journalist, I had a lot of office-like experience or skills that were transferable to an office job setting. So I got some office jobs, did that for a while. I tried getting into daycare because I wanted to be a school teacher. So I got a job as a teaching assistant at a daycare center. That didn't work out because I got sick and threw up on a teacher and got sent home, fired. Not COVID, but I was diagnosed with a stomach condition that I still live with to this day. And by this point, I had finally been diagnosed bipolar, so I was getting treatment. And then I went to work at another daycare center because, well, I worked at this one for a little bit. Maybe I'll try another one. Unfortunately, I wasn't watching the kids who were running up the ladder. He fell down the ladder, hit his forehead on another kid's right here, and shoved his tooth through this part. And that was the end of that job because that was pretty bloody and pretty traumatizing to the kid. The parents were pissed, so oops, and now I don't have a job. So I did a couple more temp jobs. I did get on as a substitute teacher and as a after-school English tutor. Don't judge my English ability based on the way I talk, because I talk, how people talk. I write how people write. And my tweeting is more based on how I talk, not how I write. But anyways, I did have the education and the requirements to be an after-school tutor, so I did that and substitute teaching for a little bit, and decided that I wanted to do something in this field. Not necessarily education per se, but something in the helping people out, specifically people with disabilities. Because the job I was trying to get was assistant teacher in the disability department out of school, helping out the kids with disabilities, the autistic kids, the Down syndrome kids, the blind kids, the deaf kids, the kids with one arm, etc. Well, I ended up moving back to Idaho this past summer, and that's where I got the job I have now, but I took a detour first. I actually got a job, a temp job, that was an actual temp job. It was for 5 weeks, helping disabled kids, teenagers, at their job. So the company would get them a job, and then my job was to supervise them and instruct them on how to do their activities. So it was things like, this is your task, you need to do this, and keep them on task, and then tell them when to take a lunch, tell them when, to go back to work, and things like that. And this lasted for exactly 5 weeks, and then I was unemployed again. And this time, luck stepped in yet again, and I got another job, which is my current job, and the job I plan on doing for probably the rest of my life, to be honest. I am what's called a direct support specialist. What that means is I'm a caregiver for adults with disabilities. So I said at the start of this video, my job is to go into their home and assist them. So that means wake them up when it's time to take their medications. That means cook them breakfast. That means, clean their apartment. It means drive them to the grocery store to get food. It means drive them to the park to get their exercise. Drive them to the library, drive them to the zoo, drive them home, entertain them, say, hey, would you like to watch a movie? Put the movie on for them. Whatever it may be. That's my current job. Now, most days are pretty easy. Most days 75-80% of the job is me sitting on the couch playing Nintendo DS, listening to podcasts, while whichever one of my clients sleeps and or sits at the computer, watching YouTube videos or just, doing their thing. And then whenever the client says, hey, I want to go to the library, we get in my car and I take him to the library. Or he says, hey, I'm hungry, I'd like you to fix macaroni and cheese for lunch. Okay, I'll cook some macaroni and cheese, whatever. And then when it comes time to do chore, you know what I mean? That's there's interruptions because I do have to do my job. But for the most part, it's pretty fucking easy. It's pretty awesome. But the best part is I'm helping people. I have disabilities. My girlfriend is neurodivergent. Most of my friends are neurodivergent. Some of them have ADHD, some of them are bipolar, some of them are on the autism spectrum. But most of my friends are neurodivergent. So I really like work, and as am I like working with other people who are neurodivergent because I'm capable enough to do the job despite my disabilities and my issues, which I do have many of. And they're good people, and I want to give them a good life. My clients trust me, and I've earned their trust, and my employers trust me, I've earned their trust. I really like my job. So, of all the things I've done, sweeping floors, mopping floors, cleaning toilets, sweeping shit out of the solid tank into the hose when I worked at the wastewater treatment plant, crawling under houses, stapling wires to the underbelly of a house, delivering pizzas, etc. All this shit I've done, even news reporter, TV producer, those were all great jobs. This is the job for me. I finally found my calling, what I want to do with the foreseeable future. Maybe not for the rest of my life, but for the foreseeable future. Where do I go from here? I don't fucking know. I don't, as you can tell by this video and my other videos, I don't plan things out very well, And sometimes, even when I have a plan, things don't always go according to plan. So where will I be in 5 years? I don't know. Not in the White House. I can say that with certainty. I'm pretty sure. But who knows? I have no idea where I'll be. I could be in Japan. I could be in Germany. I could be in Italy. I could be in England or Ireland, Canada, Mexico, wherever. Wherever I go. Who knows? Stay cool.